Good morning, loves. My name is Issata O, depending on how you met me and which iteration of the EZ Breezy Life you stepped into this community in. If this is your first time joining us, I'm a best-selling author. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Speaker, a content creator, a mom of two, wife, an entrepreneur, and just like an everyday person trying to get this life thing right, if you really want to think about it. But I thought to myself, wouldn't it be nice if we had a little conversation that was a little less formal than the topics that I typically talk about on the platform? So when I used to be a dean, I used to have something called Coffee with the Deans with our students, and it would be Mondays to Thursday, first thing in the morning, and the whole point of that was to encourage informal conversation and dialogue between the deans and the students. Reason being, sometimes the title, the way we show up at work creates this barrier that makes it difficult for students to connect with the humanness of who we are, and it makes it challenging for them to open up. And so by removing ourselves from our office and going into their native environment, whether it was their residence hall, our coffee bar, whatever that was, we allowed them the opportunity to get up close and personal and get to know us in ways outside of addressing some academic or student related issues that they were having. And what I loved about this is that I learned things about students and I never would learn about them if all of these conversations happened within an office. And so I thought that maybe we could have coffee with Issata, where I could tell you, or you could maybe share with me, some of the things that we don't always talk about when it comes to leading as women. Now, I want to make sure that I preface this by saying that I'm an African, right? Identify as Black, Christian woman, first generation college student, right? And I like to say first gen professional because we don't always recognize that for some of us, we're first gen professionals and we're learning some of these things for the first time. We're the first in our family to even be in some of the professionalized roles that we're in. And with that comes the way in which I share feedback. I also want to say that I'm also a Christian, right? And so I love Jesus. So I'm going to regularly talk about Jesus in my conversations. You don't have to love Jesus to benefit from the conversation, but I want to give you that disclaimer so that you know going into this what to expect. This being said, one of the things that I have found as a Black woman in leadership is that those around us take our resilience for granted. There is this expectation that no matter what you are going through, as a Black woman, you always have room to carry one more person's burden, one more load. And don't get me wrong, I bought into this notion for like a really long time, right? Because I do think to a certain degree that is what I saw the women around me in my personal and professional lives do. Buckle down, power through, get through it. But as I got older, as I got wiser, and as I read more, and as I learned about our health issues, and I learned about our earning, and I learned about our chronic stress, and I learned about the heart disease, I said, oh, hold on. One of these things has got to give, and it cannot be me. Okay? So being a mom of two and one of my sons having extremely complex needs means that on a regular basis in any given week, I could be engaging to up to 20 different people in different domains of his life, whether it be doctors, therapists, lawyers, it doesn't matter who it is, advocates. I could be engaging to serve as the support for my son. Now, it's not that I have anything wrong with showing up for my child. I love my baby. But the truth of the matter is that there is a constant strain and pressure with having to be on at all times. And very early in my parenthood journey, I expected others to kind of see this struggle, to see this tension. And then after a while, I learned not only will they not see it for my struggle, but many people don't even see it when they're struggling. And so when we've built up a culture, a hustle culture, where everybody just keeps going and going, to find a person who decides to rest or who is at rest seems very foreign to most. Nonetheless, I have learned to give myself permission to rest. And when I say that I don't have it to give, I don't give it. And the reason why I do that is because I have learned that the very people who are calling you to self-deplete will be the same people criticizing you when you have nothing left to give. And so it is unwise to continue to pour when your cup is empty. And so I want to share with you today some of the things that I do when I start to feel depleted. And I want to say that you can feel like you are making great progress and still be exhausted. You can feel like you are a high impact leader, things are going well, and still be depleted. So depletion is not something that just happens in the valleys. Depletion can happen for you in the mountaintops. And what I have learned is that if we don't train ourselves to get into a good flow of rest, relaxation, produce, if you don't get a good flow of how to manage your life, you will hit burnout cycles. And I'm saying that because very early on in my career, I had a fantastic mentor who tried to communicate to me that, listen, these problems are always going to come. You are never, ever going to hit a place where you're like, well, that's it. We've solved all the problems in the workplace. Now we can go to have lunch. Nope. You simply have to decide which priorities to address for the day and what has to wait until tomorrow. And there are better ways to do that than others, but you definitely can't do it well if you are running on empty. So the first thing that I do when I start noticing signs of depletion, feeling exhausted and inability to focus, the screen is blurred, my sight starts to manage, my temperament, my patience gets a little bit thinner, I take a pause. Take out my journal, and I say, what part of my life is stressing me out the most right now? What am I carrying that God never asked me to carry? What have I not surrendered? Or what do I believe I've surrendered? But because I got an alpha type female personality, I picked it back up. Yes, it sounds a little scriptive, but I self-diagnose and say, which one of these got to go to the back burner for Issata to be okay? And once I decide that, right, I can decide I'm taking a break from creating content. I'm taking a break from hanging out with certain friends. I'm taking a break from showing up in certain communities. I would rather take pauses, I've learned, than to damage relationships or damage something. So rest is also a way to prevent you getting into an avoidable crisis because you were working on a tired brain. Now, I understand that I have a little bit of control over my time now, which I love. Or maybe when you're sitting in a particular level in an organization, you get to dictate what your mornings look like. But for many of us, the majority of our careers will be spent with our time being dictated by others. So how do I have a conversation with the supervisor that I need a pause? Well, one of the things that I like to do is if you're meeting with your supervisor regularly, and, I have to preface it and say that I hope you have a good supervisor. Sometimes we don't. But if you do, it's maybe saying that in the morning, I'm a person who needs that hour pause. I need an hour of quiet to figure out what I'm doing for the day, to feel settled in who I am, because some people come in and it's like 8:30 a.m. back-to-back meetings. You're running on 10. But sometimes a small morning pause or a small no contact day is enough to make the depletion feel a little bit less and to give you the boost of energy that you need to power through for the rest of the week. And I understand that, if you are working in certain fields, like I'm coming from higher ed, student affairs, there are certain seasons where you just cannot avoid the run. But the run should not be September, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. If we're running nonstop, something somewhere is not being prioritized properly. Right? Or someone somewhere is having an unrealistic expectation about what is feasible. So the pause is necessary, and sometimes depending on where you're sitting in your organization or what your personal life looks like, it's a difficult conversation to have that conversation about the pause. But I want you to ask yourself, which difficult conversation would I prefer to have? The conversation about having to be out sick? The conversation about having to go through some crisis because of burnout? Or would I rather have the difficult conversation of saying, here's where we pause and rework what the priorities are? So that's step number one. self-diagnose. Where does the pause need to happen? Does a conversation need to happen about the pause? Like in my home, we have learned that when I start to get depleted, schedule the spa. The spa is a regular part of my life. Not because I like lavish, soft life spa experiences, but because my husband and I have learned that when I get to do the spa once or twice a month, it's a better experience for all parties involved. And guess what? My husband likes to have a happy life, and he wants to have a happy wife. And so we make the sacrifice to make sure that even if it's just for half a day, even if I'm just going to sit, right, and be there in quiet, that I get to do my solitude spa trips. And I gotta tell you, I don't take people to the spa with me because I'm an introvert who has developed extroverted tendencies because of the field that I work in. And so I know that at the core of who I am, I prefer to be with my thoughts. And because that's just not possible once you're married and you have young kids and you have all these commitments and you're in a public facing role, I create the moments to come back to myself. And that takes me to my next action point, which is retreat. What does retreat look like for you? Does it look like going to a garden? Does it look like visiting a friend who's in another state who has a more quieter life? I like to do that also. I go visit my friends who live in other states. I go visit my family who live in other states because I live in the Northeast and the pace here is way different than say a North Carolina or in Indiana. And so when I want a slower pace, I go where there is a slower pace. I don't go visit the friend who wants to go to the club Thursday, Friday, and Saturday because I'm tired. I choose to put myself around people and retreat where there is calming energy. And so think about the activities that you can engage in, or it might be a solo activity. You might like crocheting. You might like painting. You might want to take yourself to the restaurant by yourself. Yes, girl, date yourself. It is okay. And guess what? I am married, but I still date myself because I want to enjoy my own company. And quite frankly, I lived alone for 10 years before getting married. And there are moments where I miss that silence. Don't want to go back, but I need the moments. Okay? So date yourself. The next thing that I want to talk about is choose to spend time with people who actually fill your cup. If you know there's a friend who's going to come around and every time they come around is there 20 million problems that you have to help them solve, or there's a task or there's a project in mind, that's not the people to hang around. You need a friend who is okay with you watching Netflix with them and falling asleep. Because guess what? My friends know that if you come to my house and you watch Netflix, 10 minutes in, I'm falling asleep. Because yet and still, no matter how much I talk about self-care, no matter how much I tell people about prioritizing themselves, it is a daily practice that sometimes I feel miserably at. And so I can get to the Friday and feel depleted. But when I'm doing that, I'm not going to spend time with people who need me to be high energy and talking a mile a minute. I'm going to choose the calm, peaceful friend who doesn't need to take from me. And you know what? That means also choosing my phone calls. Sometimes this phone is on Do Not Disturb for 4 days straight. If you couldn't reach me, I am so sorry. I tell the school district, you need to reach my husband first. If you cannot get in contact with him, then you can call me. What are some ways that you can create margin and gap for yourself and be thoughtful about who and how you're spending your time that might be depleting you? Because sometimes I find that when we're servant leaders, we also engage in that behavior in our personal life, and we don't see it as people pleasing, but not wanting to let someone down, even when you're really not in the mood, is still a form of people pleasing. So if somebody wants to spend time with you and you just don't have the energy, or you know that this person requires a lot of energy, you have to find a way to respectfully decline. And let me tell you something about adults. You don't answer that phone call, you don't offload their problems for them, they will move on to the next person who will. Oftentimes we think that we are the be all and end all for folk, and really they'll find somebody else. They will. The next thing that I want to talk about is engage in your favorite self-care activity. I have learned that my golden lattes, my vitamins, my stress tablets, magnesium, all those things are mission critical for the baseline. Why? I have high stress hats, high stress roles that I wear, which means that my stress hormones are always going to be required at a higher demand than other people, right? So a supplement regimen is one of the ways that I avoid depletion. And let me tell you something, whenever I forget for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days to take them vitamins, it immediately starts showing in my energy level in the midday. So if you're somebody who in the middle of the day you experience like this energy crash, you might need to have a conversation with a nutritionist, dietitian, holistic healer, whoever it is that you talk to think about supplementation, right? Can you get infusions? I know a lot of my friends go and get vitamin infusions because folks are stressed and your body is showing the signs. And for me, how I always know that it's become too much is that these little pimples start coming out of my face. And it's like, girl, you gonna rest or not? So know your body, know the signs that your body tells you that you're not doing a great job of taking care of yourself. And then think about, how can I operationalize my self-care, right? Like, how can I operationalize taking my vitamins? Okay, you don't like to take the vitamin pill. Is there a multivitamin powder? Is there a multivitamin turbo shake that you can take in the morning? Is there some green powders that you can put in your water to make sure you get your greens? That's what I got to do, because listen, it's far and few in between that I'm going to be eating a stalk of broccoli. I'm just not that person. But because I've been able to self-study and know, like, I'm probably never going to juice, but I will put this green powder in my water. And something is better than nothing. So it's all about taking realistic steps based on who you are. You don't need to become a vegan, juicing, raw eating guru to be healthy and to practice self-care. But know that something positive is better than nothing. The next point that I want to emphasize is experience joy. Nothing makes me more happy than being around little kids. Like, I love little kids. I don't know why. Maybe because I grew up in a house with 7 siblings. But I love kids age 5 through 12 yelling, making noise. I'm in a happy place because there's something so innocent about that reminds me to go back to when I was burdenless. And you know, the Bible tells us that unless we be like children, we cannot enter the kingdom. And sitting down, talking with, doing crafts with children, reading to children, doing Sunday school, to be sincere with you, feeds my soul just as much as it feeds the kid's soul, right? And so you may not be a person who likes kids, and you trust me, you don't have to. I know many people who are like, what? How can that possibly be how you experience joy? But being an auntie, being a mom, those things make me super happy. And so when I need to experience joy, I create that in my house with my children. I create that for my nieces and nephews, because in seeing them light up, I light up. So find a way to experience joy. Is it hanging out with your favorite girlfriend? Is it spending time with your favorite cousins or your siblings? Is it a little getaway? Just give yourself that natural medicine of getting the good chemicals going by you smiling and laughing, right? Because a merry heart maketh like good medicine. And then sis, read your Bible. Sometimes we have to remember that the person who created the sun, moon, and stars is holding our life. And so no matter how stressful, or no matter how tenuous, or no matter how high demand, or no matter how many people want you to show up as Jesus, you have to remember that somebody else is in charge of all of this. And when I have had enough and have felt completely depleted, I literally sit back and say, you know what? Somebody else is in charge of all of this. Your girl is tired. And no, I don't pray in King James Version, because you know, sometimes you grow up thinking that like there's a certain kind of way to have a relationship with God. No, I just tell him how I feel, exactly how I feel at the moment, and trust that if God is indeed God, then he's capable of holding all my emotions, right? So I hope that some of these little life tips helped you. These are the things that I've had to learn the hard way along the journey, and they're things that I'm learning to practice every day, because we can kind of go back and fall back into old patterns, and it takes a great amount of discipline to prevent burnout, to prevent depletion, to take care of ourselves. I hope that you enjoyed this little coffee with Issata, and I hope that next time you'll consider coming on and telling me what you do to take care of yourself. All right? Have a wonderful week.